And clear of the closing doors, please.
What up, son? What up? Louis Max Grind&Pivot this afternoon. I am honored, a pleasure here to introduce to you, if you grew up in New York City between the 70s and the 90s, you knew about 42nd Street and what went on in Midtown in that area. Today, we have the director of showworldlegacy.com, the original Peep Man 1605 himself is here in the house, ready to talk to us and tell us everything about what's going on with Show World Legacy. And we're going to get into some of the behind the scenes things that went down. And I myself have some stories. So welcome, Peep Man 1605. How you doing, brother?
Hello, Louis. Thank you very much for inviting me here to your show. Great pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. So I grew up in New York, in Queens, and I frequented the city quite a bit growing up. I think you were there really in the early 80s, correct?
Well, you know, the first time I went to what we referred to later on as the Deuce, it was 42nd Street. You know, you cut school. You cut school to go to the movies. It was my friend's idea. I was worried because at the time when I was in high school, they had what were called truant officers.
Absolutely, of course.
And they would send them out to try to track you down. But the thing, what we heard on the street was the truant officers were afraid to go to 42nd Street. I go, aha, let's do this, you know. And that was my first introduction back in 1975.
Okay,
and
so
then I never knew that later on I would return there to work.
Absolutely. So hang on. So how did it all start that you got involved? Where are you originally from? Can we talk about where you're originally from? And
I was born in Manhattan.
Okay.
I spent my childhood, very precious childhood, in Connecticut, actually.
What part?
In a very small town called Bethlehem, Connecticut. A beautiful town where my mom actually grew up. I came back here to go to school in the city, to go to the High School of Art and Design.
Okay.
And that was around when I was 14 years old, you know, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. That to me, my arrival back in New York at that time, it was just the most incredible experience.
So this is mid-70s?
Yes.
This is mid-70s?
Yeah, mid-70s.
What year did you graduate high school?
I graduated in 1979.
Okay, so I graduated in 77. So we're around the same time. Gotcha, okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing about it is that I guess it goes back to when I was younger, you know, considerably younger, and I had swiped my first copy of Playboy. I didn't have the $1 to pay for it. So it was a really bold move. And when I look back at that, it was something that had to be done. It's because what was encased in Playboy, the centerfold, was everything at that point, you know. There wasn't anything else. And then, of course, I had seen a film where Raquel Welch was, you know, scantily clad, you know, running around, whatever. She was almost naked, but that was just enough for me. So there was always something there was a fascination, of course, and I was like, how come there aren't any women around here that look like that, you know? So I was always seeking that, and a lot of that has to do with the attractions to Times Square, because it was considered a forbidden place, but it offered attractions you couldn't find anywhere else, and especially when it came to the women, I don't know, I found it very appealing that there were these women that would offer themselves, you know?
Available.
It was something that was just, it had to be resolved one way or another. And even when I still lived, even before I was like 13 years old, I had taken the bus from Connecticut, you know, to the Port Authority. One time I did it in the middle of a blizzard, and I went to a porno theater on 8th Avenue. It was probably the Capri or some place like that, because I'd seen a very small ad in the New York Times, and for a porno film. So, that little ad, was everything to me. I had to investigate this, I remember being that there was a blizzard and there were mounds of snow everywhere. Right. I had, layers on, scarves, hats. So I went through the turnstile easily. I thought, this is great. And then when I get in there and I saw what was on the screen, it was all blurry. The sound was all muffled. It was the worst thing I ever saw in my life,
But it was the best.
This can't be what it is.
It was the best, but it was the best.
Yes. Yeah. So at least I was almost there looking for what I was seeking.
Right. Yeah, because I remember back in the day, getting the Village Voice. And the Village Voice was chock full in the back, chock full of all the ads. And that's really where you were able to really figure out, what was going on. So you came into the city, you got to high school, you started going, did you start going to the area regularly? No, well, the thing about it is, because my dad was an educator, I really wanted to, but I was riddled with this like ambivalence. And there was something, I just couldn't get it out of me that attracted me. I wanted to be where the action was, first of all. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want, I wanted to have experiences. I just couldn't see going from high school to college and not having the experiences I wanted. And let's be honest, I'm not afraid to say a lot of those were sexual. It was sexual, Yeah, it's fine. That awareness. Of course. And if anything, I figured, you know what? I just wanted to put this whole thing of academia or whatever it is, furthering myself, I wanted to put it on hold. I really wanted to work in a porno theater or something like that. I would have taken anything. I would have taken a regular arcade just as long as it was in the center of Times Square. Like the gritty Peepland arcade, the one that was like near 48th Street where the music stores were. You could go in from 7th Avenue and come out the other end on Broadway. It was beautiful. Exactly. I would have taken a job there in a second. It's funny you say that. I believe it was 79 or 80. I took piano lessons on 7th Avenue across the street from the Metropole. Oh my God, the Metropole, which was originally a jazz club. Exactly. So I took, so we were there, and that was right down 48th Street. We're all Sam Ash, Manny's, everything was there. Yeah. So, that was, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Let me ask a question. Were you into smoking pot at that time? Any drugs by that time, or not? When, I knew we were going to get around to this. Okay. Obviously, because I went to a lot of rock concerts in school. Obviously I was smoking, and it was a big deal. When I went to work in the peep shows, I realized I could, put it this way. Sometimes, the squalor aspect was a little overwhelming. Right. So, when I would smoke a joint, I could handle it a little bit better. Yeah, cut the edge. You know what I mean? Where it wasn't as disturbing, However, when a customer would take a crap in the booth, forget about it. I mean, and usually an executive. I don't know why, But the guy was inhaling nitrous oxide, those whippet things. Sure. So I figured, so he had an active incontinence. Right. So you were going to school. When did you actually figure that you say, I'm going to start working? Like, take us through the. I didn't get accepted to the college. I don't think it had anything really to do with my work. But I didn't get accepted to the school that my dad went to, which was Cooper Union. Okay. And I really tough to get into, though. Tough to get into. Yes, it was very tough. He got in there because he immigrated to this country, and he was a real. He deserved to get in there. Where in my case, I really wanted partially to please him, but when I was rejected, I took it in a way where I need to just go away for a while. So even more than that, I just figured, well, I'm going to get fine. Somehow I felt I was going to go out there and I was going to forge my way to a path to a very, let's call it, unconventional education. And I knew that was my destination, no matter what, Times Square. Fair enough. Okay, I just didn't know how. I went to Show World several times,
and tried to get a job as a cashier.
So take us through that, how you actually said, I'm going, the interview process, who you spoke to. Did you just show up and said, I'm looking for a job?
Well, I was wearing my Chinese jacket, which is called a minap because my dad is Asian. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, and my hair was very long, of course, because I'm a rocker. So,
of course,
maybe I wasn't dressed appropriately. I don't know what the reason was. I didn't get the job then. The fellow, when you would enter show world, then you go through the video arcade. All the way to the back is like a desk. It's called the stick. And the fellow working the desk, his name was Fat Jimmy. And he was an Italian guy from Harlem with pockmarked skin. His skin looked like looked like machine gun holes. Right. Looked like bullet holes in his skin. But so I pleaded to get a job as a silver dollar man, hopefully on the second floor show where the girls were. Right. The motivation behind going to the peep shows, in the back of my mind, it was always, well, hopefully I'm going to meet the girl of my dreams.
Really?
I really, really believe that.
When did you realize that? Later on? Or was that something that you were always...
It was something I didn't want to admit. You don't really go there when you're applying for the job and tell them that. You just tell them you're looking for work. You don't tell them, well, I'm here to get laid. I really don't think... You can't really start that way. But what I did was, I didn't give up. But then later on, I went to another one of Richie's... Well, actually, it was half owned by Richie and half owned by his partner. It was called the Pussycat on Broadway.
Right. Now, Richie is Richie Basciano, right? Richard
Basciano is owner of Show World.
Correct.
And the Pussycat was owned by another...
DiBernardo? Not DiBernardo.
No, he had a piece of that, but it was owned by Mickey Zaffarano. That's it.
Gotcha.
Mickey Zaffarano.
Right.
So I went there, and as luck would have it, my friend Mark, he hired me right away. I said, I'm looking for work, any kind of work. I don't care what kind of work. It's strange, but I'm telling you this story, and we always evoke Travis Bickle somehow. I work days, I work nights, I work doubles, I work triples. I don't care. I work weekends, I work holidays. I just wanted to work badly. I didn't even have to make. He just looked at me, and he had these like really thick, like Barney Google type eyeglasses. He said, "All right, I'll hire you as a cashier." He goes, and then he told me to report to another Peep Emporium on 7th Avenue called 7-Eleven. It's called 7-Eleven Show Follows. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to be where the action was, and all of a sudden, this was it.
You're in it.
It didn't matter getting applied to college. That didn't matter at all.
Right.
And that night, the following night, I went to work there as a cashier.
And you were were you commuting from Connecticut back?
No. I lived in the Bronx at this time.
Oh, the Bronx. Okay, so you're commuting from the Bronx, so that was no big deal.
Yeah.
That was no big deal.
No, wait a second. I'm sorry. At this time, I had a small flat on the Lower East Side.
Oh, what was that like?
I have to back up a bit. I have to back up a bit because before I got involved in the peep shows, I had a friend on the street. We used to sell bootleg T-shirts outside concerts.
Okay, down by the Academy over there, you're talking about?
Over there, with Academy, which became the Palladium, was originally the Academy.
Right.
Actually, Madison Square Garden, there was a lot of money to be made. You could sell all those shirts.
Sure.
And he was the one that got me my place down the Lower East Side, and I moved in as a squatter. And it was great because
where was that? Was that near CB's in that area?
Actually, it was not far from Delancey.
So that was a completely different neighborhood. That was wow. Because I played music down, and we played Gildersleeves, CB's, Max's. It was cranking back then.
I used to hang out at Gildersleeves, and I used to take drum lessons. And my teacher would play Gildersleeves. He would play Max's, and whatever else was out there. We would roadie and stuff. And then I really liked studying drums and everything, but there was that other thing that was unresolved. And then once I got hired in this place, it's almost like I got sucked in because I started hanging out with meeting people, and then we had something like a common thread, Good. And of course, the culture itself was so vibrant, so invigorating.
Correct.
So
let me ask you a question. Just to interrupt for a second. So, what'd you get? What was the pay? What was the pay like?
Oh, the pay was dismal.
You're right.
It
Minimum
was
wage.
just a minimum wage,
Right.
$4, and I still have my pay stubs, $4.25 an hour.
$4
However,
an hour.
as a cashier, you're also required to mop the booths.
Correct. And you did that.
I was schooled by the best in the business. The thing about Show World, which set it aside from all the other peep shows at the time, which were bordering on contamination, Show World, we even had our own brand of disinfectant, and it was very powerful. You could smell it from right out in the street. It was something that, you know, no matter what, you knew it was clean,
Right.
very clean premises. And of course, the thing about it is, these booths, you always find money on the ground in the booths.
Right. Fine. And whatever you found was yours?
That's correct. If I found like maybe a few dollars in tokens, I could turn them in at the end of the night for money. But the thing about it is, the first night of work, I'd made like $5 in tips, which my friend showed me how to do, because sometimes this token, it misses the mechanism. It falls down the slot, or it falls on the floor. It falls here, there. There was always these little nooks and crannies you'd find the tokens. And it was great. So I went to Flame Steaks, and I ate at Flame Steaks, and I bought a nickel bag, and I was so proud of myself, you know? All right?
Wow. That's amazing. Go ahead, continue. I mean, you're on your way. You're there. You're working. How many days a week?
I work 6 days a week. Yeah.
Hours, night shift, or?
I worked the night shift, which I'm lucky I worked the night shift, because later on, they put me on the second floor. That's where the girls were. That's where the love teams were.
Yeah,
that's where the porno stars were.
Right.
And that was a very big deal for me to be up there. And that was like a separate domain. You know, it was like a different universe.
Yeah, because downstairs were basically the booths, right?
Well, then downstairs we have what's called the bookstore, where we sell the really hardcore fuck books. You know, the ones that come from Denmark. They got this like varnish finish.
Yeah.
And of course, video cassettes were the big sensation coming out at the time. There was VHS and Beta. Absolutely. And then we had the special video cassette for the PAL C-Cam system from Europe. You know, not everybody had a VCR, but it was going in that direction.
Right. Had before that was Super 8s and 8s, right? With the
That's
Swedish
correct. And those films
right?
were very cheaply made,
right?
And they would constantly break in the booths. They'd have to send a mechanic in there to splice it together, and it was getting really ridiculous until video came along.
Yeah, those are the loops, basically.
Yeah, the loops. Right. Exactly, loops. 8mm, Super 8. You know.
Right.
But there's something classic to that aspect.
Oh, no doubt about it. Absolutely. Right. So upstairs was where the live action was going on.
Yeah, all the music was coming up. It was like a club up there.
Tell us about that. You go upstairs. Tell us about that. Tell us what that atmosphere was like.
Well, you know, each stair on the staircase is illuminated. Live nude girls, live sex acts, you know. So as you're getting up there, you know, you pretty much know why you're there, of course. The thing about it is that it was very exciting, especially around lunchtime and in between shifts, like when people get out of work. There were so many people swirling about that you had to make them, you know, the cashiers would constantly make announcements. They were, gentlemen, you must circulate, move around, take in the show, circulate, live naked ladies, live girls, live sex acts, you know, constantly. And the cashiers were like running all over the place, you know. They were probably stoned out of their minds too. But, you know, there was just a lot of action. It was, you know, it was everything. And the girls, you'd hear the door from each booth constantly, you know, constantly shutting and opening and shutting and opening. And on the stage, it was like a feeding frenzy. The customers surrounding the stage where the love teams were. And that was pretty much like the graduation point. I graduated to that level. I could work with those people. Of course, if they didn't want me up there, if I wasn't considered to be, you know, cool or whatever, then they would have gotten rid of me right away. You know what I mean? And furthermore, I saw somebody that was up there with me, and he lost his job, I think for drinking, you know, or something. But I didn't want to take any chances, so I was very careful as far as the pot. But everybody up there was a pothead.
Okay. Was there a camaraderie?
The camaraderie is the perfect word for it. we began to bond. First of all, we realized that we're all in the same boat, and we liked what we were doing, and we liked where we were, and we didn't have any place else to go either, right? And then little by little, we found what we had in common. And the main thing, I hate to say it, when it came to marijuana, me and the other cashiers, one cashier would say to me, "Cover for me. I'm going to go into one of the booths and puff a little bit. Cover for me, and then I'll cover for you later on."
Right.
And it was great. Things like that were great because there were so many booths in Show Follies, which was a satellite of Show World, that you could just go anywhere and just disappear for a little bit. Porter's Closet, I used to go back in the Green Door Theater. The Green Door Theater was like a little showcase for porno stars with an open stage in the back of Show Follies. And I would go back there and I would smoke there, and it was cool. My friend, the manager, she was Jamaican, and she had a very loyal crew. The girls were very loyal to her. And we just we became friends, I was friends with her up until she passed. I miss her a lot. I miss a lot of them because we became, to be accepted. The most important thing about working in these places is a sense of belonging. It instills in you to feel accepted when you feel like an outcast aside. I didn't make it into college, you see? I felt this albatross. And it was unbearable to me. The only way I could snuff out that sorrow from letting my dad down and my family, all this stuff, was I had to be in a place where I had to nullify my senses to an extent, And so I would not trade it for anything. It was at that period in time where Times Square, it was just drenched in meaning.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So the did you become friends with any of the people there that you worked with? Were you day-to-day friends with them? Did you go out with them outside of working?
Well, my friend Suki was half Japanese and half black. And I connected with her because I'm half Filipino. And my mom was a Connecticut Yankee, very proud. I really connected with her. We became very close friends. And we used to hang out. And then some of the other girls, I would hang out with them. And I was just amazed at this type of network that they had. Wherever they could go, they could just basically get whatever they wanted. It was kind of like, I would call it hustling to an extent, but they didn't have to hardly do anything. It was almost as if everybody would just fall over because they were just so gorgeous, and
Sure.
They would go to a club and they would just say something and they would just let them in. You know what I mean?
Of course.
I liked hanging out with them, and they let me to hang out with them, you see? So I figured they liked me. Of course, if they didn't like me, I wouldn't have been hanging out with them.
Absolutely.
And I like that. I like that a lot. And we were friends for a very, very, very long time, And these girls, by the way, these girls I'm mentioning, like Joy, who was Jamaican, and Suki, they were the first girls that started in the business. In fact, Joy and Suki were the very first girls to dance at Peepland when it opened in 1978.
Wow.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how long did you, are they still around? Are you in touch with them now? And what are they doing? What happened to them, if anything?
This is the thing. A lot of them worked in a lot of different places that you probably never even heard of. I mean, at the time, there were just so many, not just peep shows. There were topless bars. There
Correct.
Were meat stores.
Right.
There are places like the Horse's Rail. The Horse's Rail, I'm sure you know who owned it, probably. It was owned by Matty the Horse. And he owned a lot of clubs, a lot of bars.
Mr. Ionello to you.
Yes.
Correct.
And it was actually down the block from a very, very famous club he had called the New Peppermint Lounge. So I think the New Peppermint Lounge, I think the Mardi Gras, and I think Umberto's Clam House are probably the three most prominent places that he was the owner of. But getting back to what I was saying, there were these places, and there were just so many of them that a girl could go from one place to the other. You could always hop around.
It was a circuit.
Money. Yeah, there was a circuit. There was a total circuit. And Well, like I said, some of these places were nude clubs. They were totally, the girls were nude, but they didn't have any, there was no liquor. And some of them were topless bars. And then there were the peep shows, of course. The best peep shows were the ones owned by Richie. They were very clean, you know?
Right. They were kept up. Yeah. A friend of mine, actually, I told you, I think a friend of mine worked at Le Sec Shop.
Right.
At 227.
So the Selwyn Theater.
Yeah, that was on West 42nd. And then I think he said he worked for 3 or 4 months at Show World, but I think it was prior to you. It was a couple of years before you did. What was the quote unquote the mafia's interest that you saw? We all know that it was owned and run, but the whole underworld was run. But did you actually see and watch things change hands and guys coming and going as you almost like a fly on the wall?
Not as far as mobsters. Once in a while, maybe, but they had managers under them. They're like, when you have this thing or whatever it is, the mafia and these families, you know, they have umbrellas underneath them.
Yeah, guys are working. Guys are they're underneath working, right?
And those guys are pretty much just like you and me. You know,
Correct.
We go to work and everything, and we're not making like a great deal of money or anything, unless we're doing something on the side, you know. But the fact remains, this is the most important thing I would have to think that influenced me heavily was the fact that they paid me. They paid me on time. You know, sometimes they even gave bonuses.
Interesting.
It was a big deal, you know. And of course, if they accepted you, then if you went to work for some other place, you said, I worked over here for Richie, you would get work immediately. So,
right.
You know,
you were in the in crowd.
Yeah, because I handled money as a cashier, and that allowed me to go work in the topless bars, the new clubs, as a cashier, which is more involved, actually. You do credit cards and all that stuff. You know, you pay the girls.
Right.
And of course, usually, you know, somebody that handles money. You know,
Trust issue. Better trusted.
Yeah.
Right. Tell me about Mama Santana.
Oh. Well, her she was half Italian, half Puerto Rican. And she was a former she had quite a following, I think, in her day, because I saw her scrapbook and pictures of her where she really looked dynamite in burlesque, of course. And I can't tell you when she actually got involved in pornography per se, but I could tell you that she had a lot of influence. And the thing about it was she had cultivated this, you know, there are a lot of people, I don't know how to put it, but we weren't like raving beauties. You know what I mean? We were more like glamorous vagabonds, if you want to know. We were homeless. Okay? So I'm living in the Port Authority, but she wouldn't deny them work, even if you came in and you reeked a bad BO. She would figure out, well, she'd probably hose you down or something and put you on stage, you know? I can tell you a short story that I don't know if I wrote about it in my book or not. I'll have to check. But there was this one couple, you know, in the basement we had love teams, and the basement stage was connected to the dressing room. So you could just go from the dressing room to the stage. And there was this one couple that were like bodybuilders, you know? And then they disappeared. But then the next time they came in, the fellow who was a bodybuilder, his wife was a bodybuilder too, but the fellow, he was in a wheelchair and he was like reduced to being a vegetable. So I was like, what the fuck is this? What happened to him? Before I seen him, he was like, you know, Mr. Universe, and now he's a vegetable. It turned out he had mixed steroids and freebase, and it did something to him, and he became like that. So Santana gave them a booking anyway, because the only part of his body that worked was his dick. She goes, as long as his dick works, I'll give him work. So the girl has to pick him up out of the wheelchair and carry him to the stage to do a fucking live sex show. It's not that, and bizarre things like this would happen all the time. Right. All the time. That's the reason why we ran to work, as Joy would say, because I didn't want to miss anything.
Yeah, it was exciting. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just that there's these things that are unimaginable always happening.
Right. FOMO before it was FOMO. The fear of missing out before it was actually the fear of missing out. Well, any famous people back then that you came in contact with? Was anybody come to mind that you know was maybe how about mainstream star that came through?
Okay, I was writing about it the other day, there was this famous comedian. Well, he wasn't. He was on the brink of fame, and he was brilliant. He was a brilliant comedian and actor. In fact, he had done 2 stints in Miami Vice, and then he was auditioning for Saturday Night Live, and they were going to give it to him, but they didn't. They didn't. The other problem was his name was Charlie Barnett. I don't know if you remember him. He used to perform shows in Washington Square Park, and he would have throngs of people throwing money at him, and it's the most amazing show right there in Washington Square Park.
Did you say Charlie Barnett?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
You remember him?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. He was in a couple flicks, I think, like DC Cab or this and that. But the reason he didn't get Saturday Night Live, and the reason he had problems on Miami Vice, well, it didn't affect the performance. The thing is, he couldn't read and write, but he could remember it if you read the script to him. So, he was brilliant at Miami Vice, and then that paved the way for Saturday Night Live, but they didn't give him the job because he couldn't read and write. But the thing that connects that to Showworld, he used to go into the Showworld booths, and he put this in his act, where he would smoke his crack in the Showworld booth, right? With the glass pipe and that fucking funny little, was it a torch or whatever?
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah.
And then that white smoke comes out of there, right?
That's great.
So he says one of the cashiers, mopping the booths, opened the door and caught him smoking crack. And the cashier said, "Charlie Barnett," he goes, "What is that, a doggy film you're watching?" Something like that. So it wasn't the crack. It was the fact he was watching a film from Denmark with a woman and a dog.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That
was part of his show.
That'll do it.
So that was one that just came to mind. He was almost famous, you could say.
That's a classic. Yeah. How about who was your favorite? Who was one of your favorites in terms of the talent?
Which talent?
People that actually, it was any of your favorites, any of the porn stars back then, any of the people from live shows.
Well, on the website,
Samantha Fox, I know, Maylin.
I wrote about her. Believe me, I tried to bring that to life because that was very important that day to me. Because, a cashier sometimes, mopping the booths, a little sweaty, right? Dungarees, you know what I mean? Grubby coins and all this, right? But it was very strange, and I'll never forget that because they didn't treat us any different. Even the porno stars, strangely enough, they did not look down upon us. They didn't treat us any different. We were all the same.
Part of the team.
Yeah. In fact, I went out to smoke a joint once outside the 7-Eleven, and 7-Eleven was located, that fucking block, forget about it. You had Fantasy Twin Theaters, which used to be a Spanish theater right next door, and next door to that was the Doll, of course, the Doll. And then upstairs, the Satin Ballroom. Forget about it, right? I mean, it was like, and then around the corner, 48th Street, all the music stores, it was the best place to be. I loved that block, even more than I like, 8th Avenue and everything.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I went out and they had stanchions near the theater and all these people, and they had a red carpet. And then Tiffany Clark and Fred Lincoln get out of the limousine. So I had met Tiffany and she had gave me her T-shirt. So I was just standing over there, minding my business because what the fuck do they want to do with me? I'm nobody. And Tiffany is going in, and then she turns around, she looks at me, and she goes, "Come on." I go, "What?" "Come with us."
Really?
You're kidding me, right? So I picked up a stanchion, and I went in with them. It was such a nice thing for them to do.
So years go by, and you got the idea of putting together showworldlegacy.com. Tell us about Showworld because it's happening now and it's available. By the way, there'll be a description below, of course, with everything that the Pete Man is talking about, and then some. I've checked it out. It's so informative, and even your IG posts are very, very informative. I love it. I mean, you really get a lot. It's almost like I see it, and I'm like, don't tell too much here. Get them to go to the site. But that's why I really wanted to. I'm so happy that we actually are getting to talk. So tell us about the project of showworldlegacy.com.
Well, initially it began like this. My friend John Colasante, who was a former Showworld boss, we called them bosses. They were the managers under Richie. Richie was the real boss. When we became friends and we ever got on the phone, we meet, all we do is just talk about the way things were back then. Mm-hmm. And he'll tell me something and will trigger a memory that's long buried. And then I'll tell him something, will trigger these floods of fucking memories.
Right.
So I was like, I'd written the book already, but I wanted to take it to another level. And this was long before the pandemic. I really wanted to put something together. And then I found this really, really talented designer, So I had a little money saved. And I wanted to create something that was really not just informative, but really educational as to espousing really what we were about, because there are a lot of misconceptions, a lot of things that are misconstrued as to the kind of people we were. We were pretty much normal people. We're hardworking people. Some of us had families. A friend of mine who was actually a porno star, he said, what do they think? They think we're deviants. People think all kinds of things, but they never went into show world. And they don't know that we know how to laugh and tell jokes like everybody else. It's just Absolutely. That we laugh at different things.
Of course. No, not even really. I mean, it's just a different. Listen, it wasn't really accepted back then. Although it was, it was sensationalized quite a bit back then. Compared to now. Now it's out in front. Everybody. It's not. I don't know if it's accepted per se, but everybody's. It's quite a bit. It's rampant and easily accessible, of course, because of the internet. But back then it was a little more of an underground, which that's interesting. I mean, but yeah, you regular folk. I mean, no, how could you not be?
And so, therefore, the site was based upon the fact that I feel that in our experience, we can impart antidotes, snippets of slipstreams, perhaps, of stories that people could relate to possibly. And being that we were in a different dimension that existed, a subculture, it doesn't mean that we didn't go through the things everybody else does. And yet, we found ourselves, for whatever reason, we were making the best of the situation, so it's pretty much to dispel all these, whatever people have thought. I figure we could set the record straight. And therefore, I knew the only way to do this, it had to be photo driven. I was going to write all the text, and then John was going to tell me stories, but we would hope, praying that other people that we'd known would come forward with pictures and stories too.
Have they?
A little bit.
Yeah.
But then again, we're going to restructure the site so maybe it will be less intimidating, and then people will start leaving comments. So in which case, there's a lot of things when you have a website, you have to constantly update it and rearrange things, and see what works and what doesn't work. What does work is the fact that we've had a lot of user engagement. It took us forever to get the soundtrack to not click off when you click on a tab, and to make the marquee, all the lights back and forth. But we wanted to create like an experience,
of course,
to show her, as best as we can. And from what I've heard, it's become a great source of therapy to people that never even experienced show world. They like it. They like what it was about. They wish they could have been there. And that's I think I'm succeeding as far as what we set out to do when I hear things like that.
Absolutely. No, I think it's of interest for sure. Yeah. And obviously, the Rialto report as well is it's completely different site.
There's something on me. I have I don't know what you would call a slot or a chapter or whatever on there. But when I did that, I'm not saying, I'm saying there's a lot of things about that site which are decent or pretty good for the most part. But what we have with Show Our Legacy is completely different.
Completely different. Yeah, absolutely. But it just happens to be in the same genre.
Yeah. Because
of the golden age. Yeah. But it's really more. Also, it's New York. And that's something that you've really captured.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear that. I'm glad that you like it.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Like it, and that's enough for us to continue, because I have a lot of things I want to we want to develop, and of course the most important thing is to keep it going and to collect more materials, you know, and of course the stories. I mean, I have tons of stories, and I can always, but to have other people's stories is even more important if they come forward, and especially to know who's out there that's still alive, you know, because in fact, another very integral part of the site was the site was really created as a tribute to our fallen girls, our poor girls. A lot of them were nomadic and they were self-destructive.
Sure.
And a lot of them met their demise in ways that were really, truly horrific. And I am telling you, I was there. I was there after the girl was murdered. I was there, worked with a girl that was killed by the serial killer Joel Rifkin. I mean, they found her in his station wagon decomposed, and
Wow.
he'd already killed 200 women on the Lower East Side. You know, it just, there had to be someone to say, all right, they were part of this too, and they mattered. And that's the thing about it. It didn't matter who you were when you worked in show, or for some strange reason you mattered, and you felt that you mattered. It's very weird. You know, you could be the porter, you could be the mop man, you could be the cashier, you could be the porno star, or the booth baby, or the love team. You mattered. And we were doing, you know, it may not have been your career choice, like your guidance counselor in high school says, well, you know, what do you want to do, son? I want to do love teams. I want to do live sex action show. What?
Right. So, the question: Did you ever perform? Were you ever? Yeah. You did. How did that, just stepping back into that or from away from it, how did that actually evolve?
Well, you know, I noticed that there were the other people I was working with that had a 40-minute break every hour. They'd be in the dressing room hanging out, doing this. And of course, they were the love teams. So it was like, and then I noticed that we were all of a similar age, you know? And then I heard stories like a fellow who was doing love teams. He was doing a lot of shows. And he was formerly a cashier, but then he graduated to live sexual performance.
Was he making money? Was he making a lot? Were they making, I know they're making better money than the cashiers, but were they making real money at the time?
Well, okay, let's go back to 1982, right? 83. Okay. I was making $4.25 an hour as a cashier. But if you do love teams, you only work 20 minutes an hour, 20-minute show, and you make $8 a show. $8 a show. So to do 8 shows a day, you make $64 a day. But if you work the open theater, like the Triple Tree Theater or the Green Door Theater, that's an open stage. There's no booths.
No, the regular where you could just go in and watch, the real thing.
Show. You made $10. The man makes, and the girl makes 10 too. The thing about it is, this is how it really works. If you have a girl, okay, and she works the booth, and then she does live sex shows, that makes a lot of money working the booth as well. Okay, you're in already, because if she, you know, it can't be the other way that she doesn't want to work the booth. She has to work the booth.
Yeah, it's part of it, right?
So you're just, you know, you do the show with her. But I seen that there were a lot of, and they were young. And then, well, you know, one of the girls, because I handled money, I guess because I handled money, they felt they could trust me. But she approached me about it, you know, and I was turned on to her, so I went for it, you know, and initially, of course, it's kind of scary. However, the fact that I wanted the sex so bad that I completely forgot about that other stuff, because, you know, you get up there, all you do is focus on her, and That's the most important thing. But then after a full day, 8 shows of that full day, that's it. It was like you were doing it your whole life. So it was nothing. The windows going up and down. It was like being in something that Rod Serling created. The windows go up and down, up and down, up and down. And Michael Jackson playing Beat It, round the clock. Beat it, beat it.
Right.
Every time I heard Beat It, I started to take my clothes off. It's like Pavlov's dog.
Exactly. Behavioral, right.
Yeah, that's what it was. So, and then all of a sudden, it was being part of this different clique. See, the love teams, you know, who were they? And they were, most of them were into the drugs, obviously.
Sure.
And they were drug dealers too, you know?
Right.
So,
were they New Yorkers or from all over?
They were New Yorkers. They were from good neighborhoods. They were from bad neighborhoods. They were from Jersey. You know, they had some couples that were really daredevils, you could say. And there were couples that were clean, and there were couples that were disheveled. You know, some of the couples used to fight on stage, even. You know,
Right?
It's like,
Yeah,
put the token in. You expect lovemaking, not a couple hitting each other. All right. In fact, that was my friend Lefty and Sassy. They used to fight on stage. Yeah, my friend Lefty. Well, Lefty and Sassy, they were a salt and pepper team. They call it. You see, customers. Now, this is what we found out, because when they tally the tokens, and each booth that surrounds a People Live stage is 18 booths. At the end of the night, right, they tally all the tokens. And if they see on the sheet that this one love team is doing better than the others, obviously they're going to tell the manager to give them more bookings because it makes us more money.
Of course.
But apparently customers all over Richie's Places, they love two types of love teams the most. A male-female salt and pepper team, black and white.
Of course.
And lesbian teams.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the most amount of money. They're the one. That's what customers like to see.
Right.
Okay. So that's a very important case in point. Who was getting the bookings? Because Lefty never did anything. He would just lie there on stage. He had these fatigues, like army fatigues. He would just pull. He never even took off. He pulled down his pants, and Sassy would blow him, and he'd be reading a book. It's not exactly the greatest show you ever saw, but Sassy was like the farmer's daughter type. You know what I mean?
Right.
He wouldn't have been able to get bookings if not for her. You see, so yeah. And in most cases, let me tell you, it was the woman supporting the man. Okay, because he was incapable of getting a job anywhere in society.
Absolutely. So when did it end for you? When did it end in terms of did it end for you, and when did you kind of move on, and then we'll kind of circle back to the
in a way you don't ever want it to end, but the thing about it is, as much as you could say, well, that it was exhilarating, the shows with this girl, and then you had to get another partner, and then a lot of bad things would creep up, especially if you develop feelings for that girl. But that girl is not the type. Is a girl that doesn't have those kind of feelings. Mm-hmm. It's about sex. For some of the love teams, they were actually couples or
they were working. They were couples, and this is a way for them to make money, pay the rent, right?
Yeah, and then a lot of girls, when they're not working, they're in the street. You really can't impose your will on them or change their nature, because that's pretty much who they are. But at the time, I wasn't. I thought that maybe that would change, but things like that really don't change. The thing about it is, everybody says, how come these girls are so gorgeous and yet they have such low self-esteem? And that's the thing most people don't know. You see, how come they choose a pimp over like a guy who's successful and doesn't hurt anybody? You know what I mean? But they do. And you see this over and over, and pretty much there are always exceptions, of course, but the fact remains, 2 years after I stopped with the shows, for whatever reason, there were no more shows anyway because of the health crisis, you see. So they stopped that.
Right.
That stopped in 1987. And that was it. But it went on for years and years, of course, the live sex show. Oh, for sure. I remember there was a couple that worked when they went on the David Susskind show. You remember that show, David Susskind?
Of course I remember, the talk show. Of course.
Yeah, they went on, and this guy, Russell, I remember, black guy, and his girl, they did a lot of shows, and he was espousing, well, what a great, we educate people and all this, and it was just interesting, because back in New York back then, there were just so many, as opposed to now, because the countercultures, you see, they invigorated New York as well. You used to have that, the choice, to see whatever you wanted. You could see a Broadway show and then see a peep show, right? I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, there was this one couple that they did a lot of shows. Their name was Tom and Donna. And they were from Jersey. They were a white couple. They did a lot of shows, open. They didn't care. They worked round the clock. But the one man who did the most shows, his name was Willie. And I will refer to him as the Puerto Rican Fred Flintstone. The reason is because one time I seen him coming down the street, and it was like a cave couple, him and his girl, because her mouth was lacerated from giving so many blowjobs, you know? And he was doing 24 shows a day, and they had to be hardcore shows, no simulations. He refused to do a simulated show.
Right. He was worn out. He was worn out, huh?
It had to be hardcore all the time. Well, he had a big debt with the mafia, actually. With a friend of ours who was a loan shark. He owed him a lot of money, but he was willing to work for it, whereas the other ones, they were falling apart. Willie wasn't a drug addict. He was an alcoholic. What I couldn't understand is how he could drink Bacardi straight and go on stage with people like Samantha Fox or Tish Ambrose and achieve an erection. It was just amazing to me. It's shocking. But he believed in it so much. It was like the defining moment for him,
Is Willie still alive, you think? Is he still alive?
Well, when I ran into him once, and he had snapshots of everybody. In fact, I still have the snapshot he took of me with a girl on stage.
That's great.
And he went to work for Verizon. He became, all right. But he said, I offered to buy his snapshot book, and he wouldn't sell it to me. Right. I wish he would have sold it to me.
Willie, where are you? I mean, if anybody knows where Willie is, please get in touch.
Don't take the Puerto Rican Flintstone comment to heart.
No, everything. No, absolutely. With love, everything's a term of endearment. But
he was more like Barney Rubble anyway.
Yeah, Willie, if you're out there, get in touch with showworldlegacy.com, please.
But actually, there was another fellow, the last love team I'm going to tell you about. All right. This couple, their names were Bullwhip and Peaches. And when I worked with Snow, and a picture of Snow is on our site, she passed away. She was a very nice person. I worked with her. We were like friends, But anyway, I come on the stage. Now, Bullwhip had a 17-inch dick. And his show consisted of him. He would swing it like a bat, like he's up for playing baseball.
Right.
And he would just chase her around the stage with it. That's all he ever did. Just chased her, and she would go, help, help, like a damsel in distress. Help, help. And he would go, break out with the preparation H. All right, and he would just, and she was a seamstress, so she had to create special pants so his dick could go down the side of his, it didn't get in the way or whatever, But they were a very nice couple, and he had pictures of everybody. He had pictures of me, Snow, Pebbles. I would die to have that picture of me, Snow, and Pebbles together. Pebbles is another girl we knew. I would die to have that picture, man. Beautiful.
That's amazing.
And then they just disappeared, and that was it. Where did they go? Who knows? Right.
That's a great question. Where did they go? Where are they now? That's something, that the site, that would be great for the site to find.
They weren't on HBO, I'll tell you that much. Okay.
Yeah, I know that. No, that's show business.
I was disappointed.
That's show business. Absolutely. So what's coming up for showworldlegacy.com? Tell us what we need to look forward to. Again, we're going to put everything in the descriptions below. And I'm hoping that we can get to speak, in the future as well to see what's going on. But what's happened? Tell us what's coming up and what we need to look forward to.
We're always going to make revisions, and we're always going to try to improve upon it in such a way where it's irresistible, of course. Just like our live nude girls in the peep shows. It was kind of like if you worked in the Times Square area back then, if you were a businessman or whatever you did in Times Square area, it was a tradition in Times Square because people, especially in the neighborhood, they put their showgirls on pedestals, they worship them.
Absolutely.
And especially at lunchtime and after work. All right. And it was one of those beautiful things. So we're going to have more tributes to girls, more stories about the girls, and more pictures until we run out. And then I'm going to do even more to encourage those to come forward to tell, for example, when I told you the story about that porno theater I went to, certain things like this, how it affected our development, maybe.
That's great.
What did I come from a family? Did religion have anything to do with it?
Okay.
Or my cultural background. And I would really appreciate disclosures of that nature because we want to create that connection, and then I'll respond in a way, and hopefully you can get that ball rolling for people to expose a little bit more, I want it to be a forum for things. In fact, the forum is called Show World Prophecy, about how people came into this business, but they actually went on to other walks of life, but it didn't ruin them, or anything. If anything, it may have given them a better understanding, which is opposed, of course, to everything that people have said about us for years and years.
Correct.
All right.
Correct. Absolutely.
A lot of us. Well, this is the thing about it. I would hope that the site, with certain additional tabs, and of course, this is another thing we're developing. We want to reach out to some of those porn stars, the original ones. We want some stories about Show World. I don't care if they're good or bad stories. It's just whatever they have to say, and then where they might be now and what they've done. But they still have that as part of what they were, you see.
Right,
so
correct.
They're not in denial about it. I hope other people aren't either. And I come clean about it. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for those experiences because it did have something it did enhance my development, in different ways. I may have gotten hurt and this and that, but still, that's what great stories, that somebody has to get hurt,
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. Well said. On that note, I just want to say absolute pleasure.
My pleasure.
Speaking with you, this was Pete Man 1605. Showworldlegacy.com is the site. We're going to put all the information down in the bottom of the description, as well as a way to contact the Pete Man if you have some stories, if you frequented, if you have anything, people that that were working back then. He would love to hear from you, and I'm excited that you're doing this. We want to hear
your stories too, by the way.
That's right. You want to absolutely. Got to say shout out to my boy Javier, who's going to hopefully watch this. I want to say thank you once again. Stay well. Good to see you. You look great. I hope you're feeling all right. And we'll touch base real soon. Take care of yourself. Peace.
You too.